Hi, I'm Afton Brazzoni, and this is Scribe National's Changemaker Conversation Series. I'm here today with Ameet Khabra, who's the owner of Ameet Khabra Marketing, based in Edmonton, Alberta. She is a pay-per-click and digital marketing expert, and we've got a few things in common because she also has two dogs. So really excited to be here chatting with you today, Ameet. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and about your company to start off?
Yeah, I guess I started with pay-per-click about 11 years ago. I guess it's 11 years in September at this point. So I owned an event planning company and wanted to sell tickets and thought pay-per-click was a cool way to try doing it. So it turned out that I was relatively okay at it. So 3 years later, when I realized I hated event planning, I went, let's do pay-per-click. So I left my home, which was in BC, and moved to Alberta and started working for a national car dealer, I guess is what they are. They like basically buy car dealerships. And I went from basically spending $350 a month, like $350 a month, to $320,000 a month, so $4.3 million a year. It was quite it was quite the learning curve for me, but it was kind of the worst and the greatest year of my life because I got spotlighted by Google and then I got accepted into their ambassador program, which made me one of 5 Canadians and one of 2 in Western Canada, I think it was. And then after that, I kind of had the opportunity to pick where I wanted to work because I was basically the only person who did what I did. So I moved off to an agency just because I wanted to round out my skills a little bit more, and then realized that I hated agency life. So I quit that, didn't really think about what I was going to do next. And then a couple freelancing stuff kind of came my way, and I decided just to pursue that, and then just kept on kind of going from there. So we tried to be full service for a little while, and it didn't necessarily work out very well. So eventually at one point I went, I'm really good at PPC. That's all people know me for. Why am I trying to do full service? Like the logic never really followed through. And yeah, ever since then we've been pay-per-click only. So that's Google, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, the whole gambit really. Yeah, it's been fun.
Wow. Yeah, there's definitely something to be said for, finding your niche, kind of finding the gap in the industry and where you fit into that. And I mean, not a lot of people can actually truly say that they're one of the only ones that does it. So that's super impressive. And, I think definitely smart to go back from the full service and to focus on PPC.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the greatest thing that I did really at this point.
Yeah. You've alluded already to sort of what the beginning of that entrepreneurial journey has been like for you. But can you just maybe walk us through it a little bit more and, I don't know, identify some moments that stand out to you if you want to?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because in high school, everyone thought that I would like own a McDonald's and then eventually own another and then another, and then I would just like take over the world. And it was always really funny for me because I never really knew what I wanted to do. Like, this was never like a thing where I was like, I knew that I was meant to, run a business. It was, I was always constantly confused, but apparently everybody else around me already knew. So I guess there's that. And if I really think about it, like going back in my mind, it's like I started with like a lemonade stand and selling cookies door to door at one point, and like people would just give me their change and I was like, here's 12 cookies. Like I had no concept of how business actually really worked. I just wanted change, and that was the end of it. And I would drag my brother and like the neighborhood kids to do this with me, and we would like branch out and kind of go further and further. And it was kind of really fun, but I never really thought of that as actually being like kind of the first step in I guess my little journey in terms of like owning a business and stuff. And it's kind of funny just to go back and reflect on it and be like, oh, I guess it was kind of in me the entire time. And I also think that my family is quite entrepreneurial as well. So I think it's kind of just built in me. So I don't know. I can't really pinpoint an exact moment where I realized that it was turning into something else until like maybe about 2 years ago, maybe last year. Like it was never a thing for me up until maybe 2018, where I was like, oh, we're actually making money. Like this is kind of cool. And then I started just expanding out my team from there on. And now we're in a place where we're kind of growing pretty quickly. Actually, it's kind of cool, especially after COVID. Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Actually, what I love about your story from childhood is like when you think about the entrepreneur, the business owner, the leader, what stands out about that to me is like not only did you have the mission, you said you dragged your brother around and the neighborhood kids, so it's like you not only had the mission, but you brought others along with you. Which I really like. But yeah, so you mentioned, and this is fantastic, things are going well even through COVID. Can you talk a little bit about how the landscape around pay-per-click advertising has changed over, either the past few months or years as kind of things have really started to take off for you?
Yeah, I think when COVID hit, everybody kind of just really panicked and just went off the rails really at that point and slashed their budgets or paused everything. We had a couple clients who just have a hard time figuring out budget, and it just happened that budget time was right when COVID hit, and I was like, well, we can basically say goodbye to them forever at this point. Like, it was just one of those moments where I was like, we're screwed. Like, there's no way. And that's kind of exactly what ended up happening. They ended up slashing their budget completely to zero, and then it got back up to a little bit, and then it went back down. And then it got to a point where I kind of looked at it and went, it's not really worth it for you guys to keep on hiring us for this. Cause I'm like, at this point, like, we're taking our fees out of the ad budget. Essentially, they just got a budget, and then we would take our fee out of that. And then whatever was remaining would be the advertising spend for this one particular client. And I'm like, at this point, it doesn't even make any sense for us to keep on doing it. I'm like, I might as well just like set up the account as well as we can, and then let you try to figure out how to manage it. And then you can like call and text or whatever, whenever you needed it, or needed advice really. So that's kind of what ended up happening with one of our bigger clients, which is okay because we've recovered from it. So I guess it's not the worst thing in the world. But with everybody else, I think everyone else kind of realized that because we all had to move online, that it was actually a really great opportunity for them to actually start advertising more or just continue doing what they were doing. So I never really had to make any cases on like, this is why you should be advertising. For me, it's, I just let the business figure it out. I'm usually not really super involved in that, and I try not to be, just because I don't think it's my decision at the end of the day. Like, as much as I do care about every single client as if it's my own business, it's not like, and that's the reality of it. So I'm like, at this point, I can't really make a case for you adding ad spend to things if you don't see the value in it. Like, there's no point. But that only lasted for about, like, I would say 2 months. June was a really, really, really busy month for us. We ended up picking up about 5 or 6 accounts, which is quite unheard of for us, because we strictly go off of referrals, and referrals are inconsistent. So for us, getting that many leads and closing that many clients that quickly was a moment where I was like, oh, this might actually happen in July and in August and September. And I'm like, I think it's time to expand the team a little bit more and kind of start preparing for those things. Because comparing March to June, we increased by 14.1%. And I really thought that we would be running a negative up until the fall at this point. So the recovery was actually minimal at this, it's quite amazing how many people have realized that digital is where everybody needs to be, especially now because nobody's going out anymore. Even with the stages of reopening the cities, a lot of people are still uncomfortable with it. So I think a lot of businesses are starting to figure that part out, and now they're kind of reaching out going, okay, well, we need to be online if we want to continue running our company.
Exactly. I think, it's like there was that sharp decline. And now I do think people are quickly realizing, like, yes, I need an online presence. Yes, I need a way to communicate. Maybe if their business has changed, they need a way to communicate how. So I think it does speak to hopefully like a quick uptick. And I mean, it sounds like things are going awesome now that we're kind of coming out of that a little bit. So what would be some of the key things that you would want people to know about how pay-per-click advertising can benefit their company?
I think the first thing that we all need to realize is that pay-per-click isn't for every single business. I think a lot of us want to assume that if we put $1 in, we'll get $3 out, and that's just not, unfortunately, how it works. There's definitely times where we've thought we could actually make that dollar value kind of come out, and we haven't been able to do it. So like, obviously we're not able to predict what the market is going to tell us after a certain point. So I think that's the first thing, is kind of going in with knowing that sometimes it just doesn't work. It works for very specific businesses. It works great for e-commerce, especially if you're looking at a B2C type of business. But there's so many different businesses out there that they're so niche that a lot of people just don't know that they exist. And sometimes it's more or less of focusing on creating the brand awareness before you actually can make money off of anything, which is incredibly scary for a lot of businesses, because it's just, you're dumping potentially thousands into advertising thinking, okay, well, people will know us. And now we're banking on the fact that by the time they figure out who we are, they're going to purchase our product. And there's no guarantee. So at this point, you're kind of going, well, we're just going to take the risk and figure it out. So I think that's probably the number one thing, is just recognizing whether your business is going to work on pay-per-click and whether it's a long game or a short game for you. I think the other part of it is that it's very easy to waste spend. So I think a lot of people just want to do like the best type of keyword that they can possibly think of that's super broad and super general. And campaigns like that do not work. They're a money pit really at the end of it all. So it's kind of interesting always going into new accounts and seeing it, and they're just going, we don't get anything. And I'm like, well, yeah, no shit. Like you bid on the word Edmonton. What did you think was going to happen? Like it doesn't work. So it's always kind of interesting kind of seeing what everybody else think is going to work and going back and being like, well, where in the data does it support this notion that this was supposed to work for you? So I always like to tell everybody that part. It's very, very easy to spend a lot of money and get basically nothing in return, especially if you're not doing it properly.
I just noticed your dog behind you is so cute.
You're crying.
Mine are in here as well. Yeah, I think, speaking to what you said, that's why it is important to have a strategic advisor who can actually, and who is actually going to care enough to say like, no, this isn't a good use of your dollars, or it is if we do it this way, which obviously is something that you offer.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just more or less of being aware of what the data is telling us at the end of it all. Because a lot of other marketing sides of things, you can kind of look at it and be like, take a gut feeling off of it. Pay-per-click is very data driven. Like if the numbers don't support it, then the numbers simply just don't support it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So in terms of going kind of back to your entrepreneurship roots, in terms of other entrepreneurs who are either starting a business or thinking of doing so, or, maybe like me in their first year of business, what advice would you have for them?
Persistence is key. I feel like running a business is like basically getting into a ring for a boxing fight every single damn day. It is the worst. You are exhausted all the time. You don't feel like you have another round in you, and yet you still have to do it. And I think I think a lot of people tend to go, oh, I'm going to go into business and it'll be a smashing success overnight. And it's just not how it works, unfortunately. I don't think we started making any real money up until probably this year. And even here, I'm kind of like, are we really making real money? And I'm like, I don't know. So it's kind of, and I've been in freelance for 6 years, and I think we've been incorporated for the last 3. So it's been long enough to sit there and be like, okay, well, at what point do we actually make cash? So I think that's the thing that we all need to realize, is that it's not easy in any way, shape, or form. It's very rewarding depending on what exactly you're doing and how passionate you really are. And I think that's really the biggest thing, is that you need to actually be very passionate about what you're doing. Otherwise, you're not going to do it. And I think that's why full service didn't really work for me, because I don't like web design. I don't like creating content. And if you follow me on social media, you know that I do not like creating content in any way, shape, or form. Like my stuff is like riddled with grammatical and spelling errors. And like I could easily run it through a spell check. I just don't care enough to. Like social media too is like, at this point, like I've basically outsourced almost everything because I just can't do it anymore. So I think that it just kind of speaks to the fact that I just wasn't passionate for it. So obviously, how am I supposed to sell that really? So I think those are probably the two. It's just passionate and persistence.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you've said. Um, we have someone very persistent in the background there. But yeah, I think like for me, so I mean, it's the content, it's the writing, and it goes back to what you said at the beginning about like being really good at what you're good at. And I think that's really important. And that's where you can deliver value to clients too. Um, so many dogs. So can you talk a little bit about what's next for Ameet Khabra Marketing?
We're going through a name change. That's going to be one of the first things that we're doing. The name, honestly, like I just literally walked into the registrar's office one day when I was trying to become a sole prop and wrote Ameet Khabra down. And he's like, well, there needs to be some kind of like identifier. And I put marketing, and then that was the end of it. And then when I went to incorporate, it was the same thing. I couldn't think of a name. And then someone jokingly just went, well, you can change the name later. And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. So then I just put in ink at the end of my entire name, essentially. And that was the end of it. And then recently I started looking at it and I went, everyone keeps on assuming that I'm the person who's doing all the work. And like the website says, like, it's all about me, but I'm like, I have a team, like they're essentially taking over most of the stuff. And I'm basically acting as a project manager at this point. And it's just kind of really funny just to sit there and look at everyone and be like, you guys really don't listen to me when I'm talking to you and telling you that I'm not doing the work, someone else is doing the work. And it's literally attached to the fact that my name is the business at this point. So sorry, I have a crying dog and it's really annoying, so I have to pick him up.
I get it. It's all good.
So I think changing the name is what's going to do the most good for us at this moment, because eventually at one point I would like to remove myself from the business in the sense that I'm not working in it 8 hours a day every single day and letting everybody else kind of just go at it. And then I kind of work in more of a consulting role. So I think having a different name that doesn't make people think that it's me is going to be a really great step forward and hopefully helping us expand really at this point too, because I think a lot of people just assume that I'm freelancing and that's the end of it as well. When I was like, no, we're kind of actually a legitimate agency now. So maybe we should maybe we should actually present that to people as well. So I'm hoping to have that done before our 3rd year anniversary, which is in September. So I've got a little bit of time, about 7 or 8 weeks, but I think that's probably the next thing that's going to happen. And we're also moving. So I'll be, well, I'm personally moving, which means the company technically moves with me to Kelowna. So that'll be kind of a really cool opportunity as well. Because from what I can see, they don't have a lot of agencies out there. So it'll be kind of nice to be the only niche agency there, very much like how I was here in Edmonton as well. But yeah, that's basically, I guess, the next steps really.
That's great. Those are both really exciting things. You know, not only the new branding, the new direction, plus a move to Kelowna, can't hate that. That's awesome. Yeah. So did you have anything else to add before we sign off?
So our website is ameetkhabra.com. And then social media, I'm at AdWords Girl, basically everywhere from what I can, like LinkedIn all the way to Facebook, Instagram, and stuff like that. So I'm pretty active on the Instagram and Twitter side of things. So if you want to have like a combo about pay-per-click and how I can help you or how we could possibly help you, I think finding me on those 2 platforms is probably the best way to go about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And it was great to meet your dog as well.
Yeah, as annoying as he might be, he's kind of the best thing in the world.
Yeah, totally. I feel the same way about my dogs. Well, everyone, thank you for watching, and I will be back in 2 weeks with another Changemaker interview. In the meantime, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks so much, Ameet. Have a great day.
Thank you for having me.